Sultai is at least slightly favored in this matchup, is fairly close, but the build of Javier, as they mentioned, more counterspells in the main deck, and it's compounded by the specific build from Andrew. We do see that he has only one Elder Gargoth. It is in the main deck, but one Elder Gargoth in the 75. Some of the tars that we typically see attack the matchup, like a coma, they're not there. So Andrew's given up some points, Javier's gained some points, and I think overall that just puts it just a little bit over the line in Javier's favor.
Well, anything can happen in a game of Magic as we get underway here with a forest down on the battlefield to start things off for Andrew Cuneo. Taking a look at his hand, he's got some interactive spells, he's got some card draw, and he also has that all-powerful Yorion Sky Nomad hanging out in the Companion Zone. As well as on the other side, Javier also has Obosh the Prey Piercer, which we've gotten to see in action a little bit this weekend, and sparks tend to fly when he gets down on the battlefield.
Yeah, typically once Obosh actually hits the battlefield, if there's any number of creatures already there for this Temur Adventures deck, the game will end fairly quickly, but there is a massive cost to putting Obosh into your hand and then playing it, so we don't see it that often. It's one of those things where when it happens, it's the finishing blow.
Talk about finishing blows. That Omen of the Sea did indeed find Emergent Ultimatum for Andrew Cuneo, so all he's got to do now is survive the onslaught from these little idiots on the other side of the battlefield here as they come running in.
Yeah, the Onslaught beginning semi-early does have that one drop again because this deck is an Obosh deck. We don't typically expect to see a turn 2 creature play. Rather, we usually see one of these adventure spells, whether it's Bonecrusher Giant Stomp, which will likely get a Draw Disruption out of Andrew's hand here, or whether it's a Petty Theft. They also have the option of just leaving up Mystical Disputes, and for Javier having 2 Mystical Disputes already, this bodes really well for game 1.
Looking pretty good here indeed. It's a Bonecrusher Giant, 2 points of damage to the face. Another damage followed up here by the 1/1 token from Heart's Desire. Now, in this situation, several options available to Javier. Can either run out the Lovestruck Beast or the Bonecrusher Giant, or hold on to a Mystical Dispute for a potential what could he be worried about?
It's not that much holding up the dispute as it is if you play a 3-drop here and Andrew untaps and plays Binding the Old Gods on it, it's really bad for you. Not only because you've lost your 3-drop and the tempo, but because you've given Andrew further opportunity to ramp. So this is why Javier's considering, do I want to run a threat into this potential curve from Andrew? Do I want to just put Obosh in my hand and play this game patiently? Mystical Dispute, not something that you need to leave up on this turn of the game as the Temur Adventures player, because you're not worried about countering, let's say, a Behold the Multiverse here. You don't care about countering a Cultivate. What you want to counter is an Emergent Ultimatum.
Yeah.
You want to counter Alrund's Epiphany.
So Obosh brought to hand there for Javier Dominguez. Cultivate, a consideration here for Andrew Cuneo, and he'll go find 2 basic lands from his library.
Yeah, for Andrew, this is if along the same philosophy. You do have that Joy Disruption in hand. You do have a Heartless Act that you typically want to start leaving up against Temur, but not this turn. Their problem turn for you is turn 5 when Goldspan Dragon can start coming out, when they might consider casting that Obosh. On turn 4, because they're this Obosh odd deck, it's not that relevant. So Javier finds himself in a position where now he gets to play something while leaving up Mystical Dispute, which means that he feels at least a little bit safer, even though he still walks into that binding. Now it comes at the cost of Andrew tapping down against his turn 5, which is the scary turn, quote unquote.
Scary indeed. Extinction Event is the go-to here for Cuneo. Gonna get rid of the Lovestruck Beast, perhaps?
Yeah, I would guess that you'll get rid of the Lovestruck Beast here. Typically, if there's, for example, 2 tokens out, or if you have an opportunity to strand the Lovestruck Beast, you may consider it. But as it stands, Andrew has an answer to the next big creature, and you don't want to risk something like that Edgewall Innkeeper coming down and allowing the beast to attack.
Yeah, also not too keen to have a turn 4 or 5 in this instant. Great Henge coming down. So, biggest creatures off the board. Here comes the Edgewall Innkeeper. Javier is putting a lot of hope in this small little creature, and Bonecrusher Giant is drawing cards off of the ability there. So
Andrew had an interesting choice there. He could have actually gone for Juari Disruption on the Bone Crusher Giant. Javier, clearly leaving up a single blue mana, is a nod to Mystical Dispute. If he uses that Juari Disruption and Javier pays for it, Andrew can just untap and play Emergent Ultimatum. So he could have taken that opportunity to use this Juari Disruption as a counter because there's no way in that position Javier would pay the one. And that would allow Andrew to at least deal with the Giant while holding on to his Heartless Act. Now he's just walking directly into Javier's Mystical Dispute.
Sometimes you risk it for the biscuit and it doesn't pay off. So Mystical Dispute taking care of the only copy of Emergent Ultimatum in Andrew's hand. He does have a couple ways, though, to dig deeper into the library to find it, but he's going to have to hurry that up a little bit as the onslaught continues. It's a very terrifying onslaught, just 2 little 1/1s, but the damage is adding up as he's now down to 10.
It really is. And again, Andrew is well aware of Obosh being in that hand. So that's a really good draw. It absolutely enables him to get rid of this Kazandu Mammoth and at least bring the board a bit under control. But things are concerning. And as soon as Javier finds a second blue source, enabling him to play these Brazen Borrowers as creatures, that's when things will really turn up for Andrew.
Yeah, so Binding of the Old Gods, getting rid of the Kazandu Mammoth. You don't want to let that thing get out of hand because Great Henge is in hand there for Javier, and that is another card that can certainly run away with the game. Consideration here on the Petty Theft of the Brazen Borrower. What would he be eyeing out?
It's likely looking at Binding the Old Gods. Your board right now, the creatures are expendable. What you don't want Andrew to get is more ramp. Normally, you would look at 8 mana and say, well, what does the ninth one hurt? But Javier's only piece of counter interaction right now is that Mystical Dispute. He hasn't drawn a Sod coming yet. And that means if Andrew gets to 10 mana, he can force through an Emergent Ultimatum through a Mystical Dispute. So Javier, in a position where he's putting on pressure with the tools that he has, doesn't want to risk that happening.
Javier's in a bit of a tricky position here because he'd love to deploy Obosh the Prey Piercer, but knows that there is a Binding the Old Gods in hand, so won't even be able to leave up the blue mana to protect it here.
Yeah, Javier's mana base, it really working out awkwardly for him. This has been the downfall of Temur, as it were. Temur, when it starts on Ketria Triome, is a significantly better deck than Temur when it doesn't. And we're seeing that now. He has these Brazen Borrowers that he would love to cast as creatures, and instead he's stuck with an Obosh that, if he plays now, he's essentially dealing 1 damage and trading it with his Binding the Old Gods. If he doesn't, well, he just spent a turn doing more or less nothing. And Andrew, in a game which looked pretty poor for him, is mounting a comeback.
It's one thing you don't want to give this Sultai Ultimatum deck is time, and that is exactly what Andrew Cuneo is getting as he's now going to deploy Yorian's Sky Nomad on the board, bouncing the Omen of the Sea, and getting another look further down into his deck.
Yeah, this also allows him to play around Mystical Dispute. Still had 3 mana up to pay for it. Should Javier have another one, he does have 3 copies in the main deck. Clearly an acknowledgement to what he expected this weekend. A lot of Sultai, even though he hasn't had the chance to face the matchup. And yeah, this is Andrew just trying to make the most of what was a pretty poor early game. And fortunately, some stumbles from his point of view coming from Javier.
Yeah, certainly fortunate that the pressure hasn't mounted more from Javier's side of things, as now he's got several tools to deal with whatever Javier might deploy onto the battlefield. Does find the second blue source, finally, does Javier.
Yeah, it may be too little too late, but certainly not just yet.
So it's going to be interesting to see what the play is here from Javier. He knows that there's enough mana down on the board for Andrew Cuneo to cast an Emergent Ultimatum if he has it.
Yeah, right now, what Javier needs to set up for is a pass, play Brazen Borrower as a creature on Andrew's end step, untap, and set up for something like a Petty Theft on the Yorian, play Obosh, and try to get lethal that way. So for Andrew, what would be really good is some instant speed
Oh,
removal, which
goodness.
he doesn't have right now.
He has certainly got a Handful of sagas, though. Elspeth's Nightmare coupled with 3 Binding the Old Gods? Goodness me.
Elspeth's Nightmare is good. All of these removals, as long as they get rid of at least the Edgewall Innkeeper, means that the line that I previously mentioned from Javier is no longer lethal. It's only dealing 7 damage at most. If you get rid of both small creatures, you're only dealing 6. And now, because Javier is out of blue mana, Andrew can actually binding this Brazen Bar. Javier opted to get a card off of it rather than save it for the end step, knowing the sorcery speed removal was there in Andrew's hand.
So gets a card out of it, loses a creature though. And Andrew Cuneo's got to be quite happy with his position at the moment. 2 active enchantments on the battlefield in these sagas, 3 Omen of the Seas, digging further down into the library, and finds a Maze Mind Tome.
Yeah, you see Javier shaking his head there. He knows this game has more or less slipped away from him. Part of that is because that Elspeth's Nightmare on the board is going to give Andrew a peek at this hand. He can foretell this saw it coming this turn and have access to a counterspell in the exile zone, so it can't get taken by Elspeth's Nightmare. But from Andrew's point of view, he has the luxury of playing around things now. He's going to have information, he's going to have cards to deal with, and his life total is stabilized. Javier's no longer attacking.
Javier is, however, able to get Lovestruck Beast down along with the Great Henge, able to foretell that sword coming. But we will have the activation here on Elspeth's Nightmare in Chapter 2, which will take a look at the hand and get rid of that mystical dispute. So, what can Andrew Cuneo do while the defenses are down from Javier Dominguez?
He can cast his entire hand and make Javier suffer, as both Great Henge and Lovestruck Beast leaving the battlefield here is disastrous for Javier. He's not going to enjoy this. He can get the Maze Mind Tome as well. You could scry if you want, and yeah, you see the slight nod of acknowledgement. Javier still has a Saw It coming, so the next big spell from Andrew isn't quite good enough, but part of this is Andrew can now play the card advantage game. Again, there's no pressure coming from Javier at the moment.
Yeah. Man, that was a brutal turn. You could see the grimace on Javier's face. And Marty not pulling any punches, just like, yep, he's gonna get his board wiped. Basically obliterated. Just casualties right there.
Yeah, Binding the Old Gods, just such an impressive card from this new Kaldheim set. It allowing these ramp decks to have a removal spell that hits any card type.
Mm-hmm.
Typically, we've dealt with situations where Great Henge has been a great sticky permanent, at least in game one, because people aren't playing removal that is widespread. We see Heartless Axe, we see Eliminates, and then when a massive artifact comes down or an enchantment, it doesn't have an answer to it. Not the case now with Binding the Old Gods. This deck has to play 4 copies of this and answer whatever it needs to.
Yeah, certainly a powerful addition to these decks, to these Yorion piles even. Just getting that double value off of the card is absolutely backbreaking in most instances. As we're now going to go and fetch a bunch of land from Andrew Cuneo's library and just keep on ramping. You know, deck's doing what it wants to. It just hasn't found an ultimatum yet.
Yeah, you do see Andrew getting a forest over a triome there. That's because if he's going to draw another land, he would prefer it to be a triome. At this point, he would be looking to cycle it. He has a decision here where he knows about the Brazen Borrower in Javier's hand. So he knows that he's currently facing down 7 damage. Fortunately, 7 is not 8, so he's not dying, but he does need to find something. So we may actually see him activate an Omen of the Sea first, try to scry, and then activate Maze Mind Tome to draw a card.
2 mana floating here for Andrew Cuneo as he tries to work his way around this very powerful Obosh the Prey Piercer on the battlefield. Like you mentioned, knowing that there is a Brazen Borrower in hand. What's he going to do here?
Yeah, Andrew thinking about the Brazen Borrower, or more importantly in this situation, the Petty Theft mode, as well as that Saw It Coming that's sitting foretold. Now, if Javier goes for this end step Petty Theft and doesn't leave up the Saw It Coming, that's Andrew's window to start scrying into hoping and finding an instant speed removal spell. That's why you see Javier untap first. Now he has all of his blue mana, so even if he goes for the Petty Theft and Andrew finds a removal spell, Javier has the Saw It Coming. So Javier more or less is guaranteed to get 7 damage through here if he wants it. And then it comes down to Andrew being able to answer this board and prevent himself from taking that last point of damage, the most crucial point of damage.
So Javier is in the position, perhaps, where he's just hoping for Bone Crusher Giant off the top of the library, right? Like, oh, you're at
As
1?
the story we've seen time and time again, Bone Crusher Giant off the top to stomp on hopes and dreams of players who have stabilized. And that may be the position that Javier has to maneuver himself into. The bar channel pathway off the top isn't going to do it for him, and he knows that Andrew has 2 extra draws between now and next turn, as well as up to 6 scries. So the odds of Andrew finding one or more things that he wants to do with his mountain of mana that he has, pretty good. So Javier knows that the clock is on him.
I would just like to point out, Monty, that there are no mountains in Cuneo's deck.
Oh, of course. This forest of mana, as it were.
There we go. There you go. So Obosh the Prey Piercer swinging on in with the 1/1. Yorion the Sky Nomad is going to duke it out with his fellow companion. And we're going to see a couple scries here. And then a draw if something on top of the library is what Andrew Cuneo wants to see. Heartless
Beautiful.
Acts. Oh my goodness me. Exactly what he wanted to find.
Yeah, Javier sees the top. He knows there's maybe 3 cards in Andrew's deck that are being kept on top there, and Heartless Act is the one. Because now Andrew blocked first. This was perfect sequencing from him. He put the Yorion in front, so Javier couldn't change his mind in Petty Theft after Andrew went digging. He wanted that block locked in, and then he can find the Heartless Act. Now, if Javier uses this saw it coming, well, Andrew still has 4 more scries between now and next turn, and if he finds an Emergent Ultimatum, it is resolving at this point, and there's nothing Javier can do about it.
Goodness me, this is going to be very, very tense moments here for Javier. As we go scrying once again with Omen of the Sea, there's a Vorinclex off the top of the library. What do you think about that, Mr. Cuneo?
I think with that Brazen Borrower representing a Petty Theft as well, you can't keep that on top because Javier now has the mana to both Petty Theft a blocker and play Brazen Borrower. So he is representing lethal damage on the next turn. This is something Andrew is aware of. So he has to be thinking about this decision and going, okay, well, Vorinclex isn't going to get the job done. Likely we'll see the upkeep scries from the Omen of the Sea. He has enough mana and perfect information. So for Andrew, it's about find Alrund's Epiphany, find Emergent Ultimatum. Those are the tools you need.
Oh, finds a Jawari Disruption off the top there, opts not to scry. But we do have another draw on Maze Mind Tome, so it's going to have to be a good one.
Omen of the Sea, let's see what you can do.
Carefully
you
tapping
do
the
see
mana.
Andrew holding full control here. The reason for this is he wants to activate Maze Mind Tome first, and then put Omen of the Sea on the stack. If he did it the other way, Javier could Petty Theft the Maze Mind Tome before the scries from the Omen resolved, and Andrew would be forced to draw a blind card. He doesn't have the luxury of the mana to do that, so this is the really intentional sequencing that Andrew is doing here, and those cards are not good enough.
Those are some big brain moves there as we scry 2 to the bottom for Andrew Cuneo. What is it gonna be? It's now or never for Andrew Cuneo. It's an Emergent Ultimatum off the top of the library. That is exactly what he wanted to find, and Javier Dominguez cannot do anything about it.
He saw bottom. He's hoping here that Andrew didn't hit it, and he did. Look at
his face. I feel your pain, Javier. I feel it. But Andrew Cuneo has worked his way into a position where he can take over this game now. Let's see what poison he gives to Javier Dominguez to pick.
I'm thinking Cure, Best the Sea God, Alrund's Epiphany, and Tybalt here. I think that is the line where you can get rid of this Obosh guaranteed. Either you're taking an extra turn with an 8/8 token, or you're just getting the 2 threats, and Andrew drew the card he needed.
Awesome stuff here as Valky, God of Lies, and Kiora Best the Sea God are the cards given back to Andrew Cuneo. So
Javier's not amused.
No, I would not. I don't think anyone's amused when this resolves. Let's be honest.
Ailey, there is a missequencing here from Andrew, he's resolving Tybalt first, which means, and Andrew knows it, I think, with Cura Best the Sea God coming down, Javier can respond and bounce this Tybalt before Andrew can activate it.
Oh
Javier has
no.
lethal.
Oh no.
Okay, it's not lethal quite yet. Andrew can play Tybalt or Valky as a creature, but that means that with the Brazen Borrower getting through for 6 damage, this is still pretty problematic for Andrew. This was a huge missequencing from Andrew Cuneo here.
Oh goodness. This game isn't over yet, friends. Hold on to your chairs as we are now going to see Valky down on the battlefield as a creature and Jawari Ruins on the
A
battlefield as a
Stomp, a Brazen Borrower, anything for
anything.
Javier.
Oh,
Goldspan Dragon
the
does
Goldspan
it!
Dragon.
Oh my goodness.
What a game between these two players. Goldspan Dragon swinging on in with a Brazen Borrow. Look at Andrew's face. He knows that this just did not go his way this time around.
I think, at least for Andrew, looking at this, the Goldspan Dragon would likely have been lethal anyways. Yeah. Valky would have removed the Obosh, and he would have still taken 7 damage rather than 14. But he put himself in a position where he was dead to so many more things, and Javier, one good top deck deserves another. He matches that Emergent Ultimatum and steals the game with that Goldspan Dragon.
Oh my goodness, what a game. And that was game 1. So if this is what we can expect from the rest of the top 8 today, I'm all for it. What an absolutely amazing game of Magic between those two players.
That was wild.
All right, sideboard time. What are we doing here, Monty?
Andrew is going to be looking at those Shark Typhoons to help improve the matchup a little. He'll be able to get rid of some of his sweepers. We do see him board down a little as an acknowledgement of the counter spells that Javier has access to. We do see one more Emergent Ultimatum going out, one of the 2 Valkyries that this build of the deck is running going out. Elspeth's Nightmare, not particularly good against this Temur deck, so we do see some copies of that going out, and actually some Disdainful Strokes, which is one of the better counter spells against this Temur deck, just because it hits the problem cards like the Goldspan Dragons and the Auron Epiphanies. But the notable thing is Javier's build of Temur doesn't have Auron's Epiphany. He didn't bring any to this tournament, so you do see that Andrew realizes there's not that many targets for that stroke post-board.
Well, both players are happy with their sideboarding decisions. Let's jump into game number 2 here. Take a look at these opening hands. Slightly awkward one there for Javier. No blue mana to speak of. And
yeah, deceptive
one-lander.
Cuneo's hand looks great.
Yeah. I mean, there's 3 lands here, if you are happy to make your mammoths into lands.
Yeah, this the problem is it's not a very tempo-oriented hand. Even if you wanted to stomp on turn 2, as it stands, you're not able to play Bonecrusher Giant. If you draw a blue source, this hand is great, but what you're essentially counting on is a Bonecrusher Giant, 3 lands, and 3 uncastable cards. So this hand is fairly awkward from Javier. He's agonizing over it, thinking about the lands in the deck. I don't think it would be surprising to see him mulligan it, try to find something better. But, you know, mulliganing a 3-land hand is a tough ask.
It'll be interesting to see what the decision made here is, because, like you said, if there is a blue, then this is great, you know? Able to cast Petty Theft, keep up Mystical Dispute, can get Bonecrusher Giant down on curve, hopefully. But yeah, it's a very tricky decision here for Javier.
Yeah, you see him hovering over that mulligan button, and disciplined laydown, in my opinion. I think it's really tempting to keep the hand, but the more you look at it, the more awkward it begins to seem as time goes on.
Yeah. So it gets a second hand that he seems to be happy with. No red mana in this one. And gonna send back the Brazen Borrower, perhaps.
Yeah, I think these land drops are really important from Javier's point of view. You need to put yourself in a position where you can make the most of the cards you draw. Again, a little awkward. There's no red mana in the hand this time, so any card like a Bonecrusher Giant that we draw currently stranded, but with 2 Mystical Disputes, he can at least hope to buy some time if necessary.
Yeah. And, you know, being on the draw as well, it's more of a reactive game than an attacking game that he'll be playing, at least for the first few turns.
I don't think it would be surprising to see Javier just petty theft this Wolf Willow Haven should he choose to do so. Just try to set Andrew back a bit on mana, considering his hand is a bit more developmental. Instead, opts to just play the Kazandu Mammoth as a Kazandu Valley. And for Andrew, this means that he gets to develop further, considering he's missing a land drop here.
Oh, goodness me. Two Willful Havens on the two lands available. Maze Mind Tome hits the battlefield here for Cuneo. We'll pass the turn back to find an Edgewall Innkeeper. Nice pickup there for Javier.
Definitely not a bad pickup. Still looking for a red source to be able to cast this Bone Crusher Giant or Stomp, but at least Edgewall Innkeeper means that if Javier tries to disrupt some of this curve from Andrew with a Petty Theft, he could Edgewall Innkeeper and cast the creature afterwards.
Goes for the Obosh the Prey Piercer into hand. Passes the turn back as we'll see a scry there from Andrew Cuneo. Finds the third land off the top of the library
It's
in the Clearwater
Gargaroth time.
pathway. Oh, yeah. Cool. What's this, turn 4 Gargaroth?
If
Seems
you
good.
see an opponent that is tapped out, you're playing your Gargaroth when it's available to you. And
Oh, yes.
Javier can Petty Theft it now, but he's not able to leave up Mystical Dispute to counter it on the way down. He's only on 4 mana, so it is very likely that Javier will have to give Andrew a turn with the Gargaroth, as Petty Thefting it means that Andrew can just redeploy it.
Oh, he's going to go for it anyway. Doesn't want this big old Chungus attacking in here. So sends it back to hand. It's going to make him cast it again, unless Andrew finds something else he can play the next turn that maybe perhaps a Mystical Dispute could hit.
Yeah, the benefit for Andrew is that he is aware of Javier's deck list. He knows the counterspells available to Javier, and there's nothing that is going to interact with this Gargaroth. If the best thing Javier can do is Petty Theft it, that just means Andrew's going to run it back out and ask him the question again the next turn. Can you deal with the Gargaroth?
The answer right now is no.
A
Unfortunately.
resounding no, in fact.
On the plus side, he's found a mountain.
Yeah, Javier has drawn double red sources in the last 2 turns. He could now play this Brazen Borrower to draw a card, just pass the turn and do it on Andrew's turn. But now Javier finds himself playing a reactive game plan against a card that you cannot be reactive against. This is a card that you need to force your way off the board against.
Oh my goodness. It hits so hard. Trample, Vigilance, draws you cards, gains you life, makes more 3/3s. What more could you want in a 5-drop, I ask you?
Basically nothing. You do see Andrew going for the main phase activation of Maze My Tome, looking for exactly a land that he could play there. We'll likely see Andrew use this Eliminate in response on this Innkeeper. Javier will still get a card, but at least no future cards. And considering Andrew has more or less identified that Javier is in a desperate position right now, the less cards he can give him, the better this is.
Luckily for Javier, he did find another Edgewall Innkeeper off the top of the library. Looks to be going towards Obosh the Prey Piercer. What is he going to deploy here? Let's get the land down first, and then follow that up with Obosh.
Yeah, Obosh basically offering a trade with the Gargaroth. He does have a Mystical Dispute to back it up, and because Obosh and Gargaroth are both odd, Extinction Event not a reasonable answer here.
Yeah, Bone Crusher Giant goes for this route instead, where Edgewall Innkeeper can draw another card and finds a great henge off the top. All right.
Javier's starting to get somewhere. However, the line that he just took means that once again he doesn't have good blocks on this Gargaroth. Brazen Borrower cannot block Gargaroth, and awkwardly enough, it also can't attack into Gargaroth. And I think from Andrew, he could just cast Vorinclex here and attack.
Yeah, why not? I mean, these creatures on Javier's board are not going to stop 2 6/6s trampling through.
And Javier's list notably does not have any disdainful strokes. The only counterspells available to Javier, and Andrew is aware of this, are Mystical Disputes and Sod Cummings, and there's no card foretold. Vorinclex is green. You can't Mystical Dispute it with 2 mana, so Andrew just knows that this is going to resolve.
Here he comes, Vorinclex, Monstrous Raider alongside the Elder Gargaroth. Swing on in, you 2 enormous critters.
I don't think it would be surprising for Andrew to just make a beast here. He is now the aggressor. He wants to get on the board, and this attack is putting Javier at 2 life.
Goodness.
You want to play a Great Henge? Go right ahead. Be my guest.
Yeah, at this point, it doesn't look like it's going to help poor Javier much.
I don't think anything is going to help poor Javier much here.
All right, well, can get down the Great Henge. That gives us a little bit of life for Javier.
I think that's just death.
Yeah, that's just death. I don't even
That's
think he
just
had enough
death.
mana to get Obosh down there anyway. So let's go to game number 3. The big old beatdowns coming from Andrew Cuneo in game 2, picking him up the victory. Any changes here from Javier's side as we go into game number 3?
Not really. The play should be better for him. Again, we saw the hand from him was a bit awkward. He took a mulligan. The second hand, better, but not by much, and certainly not against the game plan that Andrew Cuneo was bringing. Everything just lined up quite awkwardly. For Andrew, things are going to get a bit tougher. It's more likely that he gets run over by an Edgewall Innkeeper draw while on the draw. So we need to see what the hands look like. But
Ooh.
this hand from Javier is pretty perfect.
I believe that's what the cool kids will call poggers. I like that hand a lot.
It's very good.
Oh no, but there's something that answers that hand quite well, barring the Goldspan Dragon in 2 Shadows Verdict. There's also a Heartless Act and a Binding the Old Gods. So Andrew Cuneo is very much on the kill all the things plan this time around.
He absolutely is. He does need to get to that Shadow's Verdict. Currently only 3 lands in hand, 2 before he drew that Jawari Disruption. So certainly the hand improving currently, but perhaps not fast enough depending on what Javier's curve looks like. Andrew obviously doesn't know. I think it's pretty tempting to Heartless Act this Edgewall Innkeeper right now and just try to at least keep cards out of Javier's hand. But if you do that, you're at least setting yourself up to take 5 damage from that Lovestruck Beast the next turn.
Yeah, and then you have to worry about having a turn 4 Great Henge come down too, and then that just snowballs the card advantage, and then that just makes for a bad time. So Heartless Act here, going to be deployed on the Edgewall Innkeeper. No more card draw for you for now. You can see Javier's a little bit upset about that. Nice sword coming, picked up.
Oh, this hand's getting really scary from Javier. Javier is now in a position where he's going to be able to set up a side coming next turn by foretelling it, and then the turn after he can play Goldspan Dragon, leaving up side coming from the treasure he makes when attacking with it. Even if Andrew has something like a Heartless Act, that's only going to trigger the Goldspan Dragon, give a treasure, and then side coming will still counter the removal spell. So Javier's hand is setting up pressure that I don't know if Andrew can answer.
Yeah, it's such a great interaction with Goldspan Dragon. Being able to deploy a threat and any instant speed removal just gets instantly answered by the treasure that it makes. It's a super powerful card that we've seen introduced into this deck.
Yeah, Andrew down to 12 already. I'm not sure if Javier will want to deploy the Edgewall Innkeeper here, as it will run into something like an Extinction event. He may just go land Foretell Sod coming past the turn. If he's feeling comfortable in his position, he may just not even foretell the Sod coming. It does work out worse with the Goldspan Dragon next turn, but it is better in the immediate.
Yeah. Leaves up the Mystical Dispute as well as Sword Coming, so it can counter this Binding the Old Gods to protect the creatures on board, which are doing a very good job at whittling down Andrew's life total.
Yeah, I think they're doing a very good job of ending this game, as now Javier is going to get to counter this, untap. If he finds a land, he can play the Goldspan Dragon and have 11 damage coming through. If he doesn't find a land, well, he would still have a hard counter for that Shadow's Verdict that is Andrew's out here. And yeah, you see him just sitting on this board.
7 points of damage coming in. Yeah, you don't need it. There's no need to overcommit to a battlefield because something could bite you in the butt here, and, you know, just hold on to your threats. You have a hasty dragon that you can protect at a later stage, so don't deploy it.
Yeah, there's no real cost to foretelling here. If Andrew finds a way around the sod coming, that would be bad, but again, this is the hard luck situation from Javier. Andrew has to go for Shadow's Verdict. Javier has to saw it coming, and that means Javier is going to move on to the semifinals.
He sure is at that. So Javier Dominguez, very pleased with his draws. What an absolutely incredible game between these players. And you know what? Let's just chuck the dragon down there for good measure. Overkill is best kill. Congratulations, Javier Dominguez, picking up the first victory in our top 8. Woo! That was an intense matchup.
Yeah, pretty fitting to do it with a haste creature, a red hasty creature at that, considering the fervent champions that he behind him. And Yeah, just really well played by Javier.